Hello and welcome to this comparison video of two audiobook versions of my all-time favourite book, The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the historic version read by Martin Shaw. It's more than 20 years old and I'm sure adored by many Tolkien fans. And this, I only have it on my phone, the audible version of Andy Serkis, the brand new version read by Gollum, Andy Serkis. And for you to understand where I'm coming from looking at these two audiobooks, I'm Alex. I'm a sound addict and avid Tolkien fan, a composer. I'm currently composing a soundtrack for the Silmarillion, so have a look around on my channel for the premiere, which is to happen soon. And it's therefore no surprise that I love the Silmarillion. Out of all of Tolkien's works, this is my favourite because it's the backbone of the whole world, the narrative framework, and I love the grandeur, the glory, the beauty, the bittersweetness, the dramatic scope. It's an almost biblical account of epic proportions. And everything is just so much more grand and glorious than in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And I love how language is music in the Silmarillion. And as a sound addict, I just love how it's reverberating in me, how it's a full body experience, really. And it's also no surprise that I love audiobooks because that completes the sonic experience, Whenever I'm reading the Silmarillion, I am creating my own audiobook, so I make sure I'm always reading it out loud, because that's just the greatest joy, to feel the beauty of the language. So let's have a look at these two versions. And at the end of the video, of course, I'm going to tell you what my personal preference is. So stay tuned. So let's compare these two versions. And when I say compare, I mean just consider these are two grandmasters of their trade. Andy Serkis, of course, from his absolutely fabulous Gollum performance and Smeagol in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, directed by Peter Jackson. And Martin Shaw, you might not know. I fondly remember his Banquo in Roman Polanski's Macbeth, but both are really established actors, grandmasters of their trade. So let's look at what actually makes a good audiobook for me personally. I, of course, want to be fully immersed in that world. This is what I get from reading. And when I'm reading, I have a voice in my head, or I'm doing it. What I want to get this full immersion, to fully be in that world, is of course a beautiful voice, fully resonant, something that is musical, that is just very pleasing to listen to, gratifying almost. I'm a sound addict, I told you that. So for me, when I listen to beautiful voices, they can tell me anything. However, that's not to be said that the phrasing and the narration itself isn't important. Of course, a beautiful voice that's just doing a boring reading, that's not something that I'm interested in. So yes, I think they're equally important. And then when it comes to the Silmarillion, and that epic scope, you do need that kind of phrasing that takes you to the depths and the heights. And then there's this third crucial component, which for me is very important, and that's a personal one. You might agree or disagree, and that's the pronunciation of all these beautiful elven names. Tolkien was very specific as he laid out the rules for pronunciation. Now, mind you, it's not so much about getting it right, but I just know so much about the pronunciation that I don't enjoy when people pronounce it differently. So, that being said, let's dive in.
At the first that ring had been entrusted to Círdan, Lord of the Havens, but he had surrendered it to Mithrandir, for he knew whence he came, and whither at last he would return. "Take now this ring," he said, "for thy labours and thy cares will be heavy, but in all it will support thee and defend thee from weariness. For this is the ring of fire, and herewith, may be, thou shalt rekindle hearts to the valour of old in a world that grows chill."
At the first, that ring had been entrusted to Círdan, Lord of the Havens, but he had surrendered it to Mithrandir, for he knew whence he came and whither at last he would return. "Take now this ring," he said, "for thy labours and thy cares will be heavy, but in all it will support thee and defend thee from weariness. For this is the ring of fire, and herewith, may be, thou shalt rekindle hearts to the valour of old in a world that grows chill."
All right, so my take on, let's say, the beauty of the voice, for me, both, of course, have very beautiful and well-trained voices. I think that Martin Shaw, in all of the Silmarillion, we're talking about 20 hours of narration, there's not a single, not a split second where he loses control of his voice or where there's just some lack of control in over 20 hours of narration. That's absolutely astounding. The same can be said about Andy Serkis. Well, never really sure how to pronounce his name. Sorry, Andy. Anyway, so in general, they both, of course, have these extremely resonant, well-trained, low-reaching voices, but also, they can go anywhere with their voices. What is my personal preference? I'd say that Andy Serkis has a certain tendency that in the lower range, there's a bit of too much rumble for me, too much sound where there could be music, if you get my meaning. So there's an almost vocal fry quality to the voice without him actually using vocal fry, which when I listen to Martin Shaw, he's so resonant in the depth. It's so I'd say I have this propensity towards, enjoying Martin Shaw a bit more. But, we're talking, this is actually a luxury comparison to absolutely stellar people. So I love both voices, but Martin Shaw's voice just gives me goosebumps. And I just love just the sound of everything he reads out. The sound is absolutely wonderful. Now, keep in mind that this is, of course, the version that I'm used to. I've been listening to it for the past years on a very regular basis. I mean, I do read the Silmarillion more, but whenever it was the only audiobook version around. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. Let's talk about phrasing then. I'm very fond of the way that Martin Shaw goes about this. In that he is wonderful in how he, grasps the grandeur and the epicness and the sheer scale. So there's a bigness, for lack of a better word, in the way he narrates. However, I do feel that it's a bit monotonous in style. That means that he has a certain way of going about it, and he's almost always using it. I'm not saying that this is annoying. I'm just saying that after, years of listening to that, I'd say here and there I might want some more variation in terms of the speed or the phrasing, going up and down with the voice, the melodic component. So this is just saying I love it, but there could be something. So my ideal version would be him with a bit more elaborate phrasing or more varied phrasing. That's it, actually. Now, if I listen, I'm listening to Andy Serkis, and I notice he takes it very slowly. There's a marked difference in speed. I wrote it down. So for the chapter of the ruin of Beleriand, Martin Shaw takes 35 minutes, whereas Andy Serkis takes a whopping 46 minutes. So that's almost 10 minutes longer for a single chapter. So just so you're aware, he's taking it very slowly. And I get his intention. I think he wants to evoke the depth and the grandeur, really. And but I feel, for my taste right now, I've only listened to it once, and some tidbits more often. I feel that for me it's a bit too slow, and let's say I feel that he's trying to evoke something that he doesn't need to evoke, if that makes sense. So it's already there in the narration. No need to paint over it. This is a very, very subtly done, of course. I'm not saying that he's exaggerating massively, but for my taste, it's too much. But it might be that, a year hence, I'm in love with it. It might be. But for now, I feel that for me, it's a bit too much, And I realize that it's a bit unfair because I'm so used to Martin Shaw, of course, and it's markedly different. Anyway, let's move on to that last, but for me, very crucial point, and that is pronunciation. Yes, I love all these beautiful names. I love Fingolfin, Fëanor, Beleriand, Osirian. I love all these names, and I've studied their pronunciation in that, there are the appendices, there are other notes that he's published, or that were published after his death. So by now, in 2023, I feel you can actually know. And for an audiobook in 2023, I would expect this to be accurate. Not perfect. Let's throw perfectionism out of the window. But the sonic pleasure I derive from the kind of pronunciation that Tolkien had in mind, I love it. So if people don't do that and just generically pronounce the names, in an anglicized or whatever form, I don't like it. It turns me off. So if we're talking about immersion, this is an immersion breaker. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Martin Shaw, and people have complained about his pronunciation. But I have to say, he's actually doing a lot of things right, and he's consistent in his mistakes. Okay, so he's always doing the same things like, what are we actually talking about? We're talking about mostly stresses put on the wrong syllable, and then, of course, some vowel and consonant pronunciations. We know about Martin Shaw. It's not accurate, but I actually am not too turned off because I feel he's putting so much effort into it, and it was 20 years ago, so I'm willing to cut him some slack. So Andy Serkis has the tougher job because he's up against, the Lord of the Rings trilogy had already established some, pronunciation sensitivity in the audience. We know a bit about it. So we don't let them get away with a sloppy job. And I'm not really happy. I'm going to say, if you are keen on him, if you're waiting for him to pronounce everything correctly or, in the way that Tolkien had in mind, you will be let down. He did a very good job in this excerpt, Círdan. And there are some things that he does really well. Earendir, for example, Doriath, Angrod, Elwing, Nevrast. All of these things he says perfectly. But he's inconsistent. That means sometimes he's using a different form of the name. Let's take the name Maeglin. He says Maeglin, and the same vowel sound occurs in Aignor, and he says Agnor. So he's not consistent in how he renders the sounds. Okay, Fëanor, sometimes he says as it is meant to be, Feanor. Sometimes he goes into the anglicized Feanor. So I'm not really sure, but what I'm really unhappy about is him pronouncing Turambar. Turin Turambar. So he's using a schwa, a weak syllable, and he's doing this for Eldamar. Eldamar would be the correct pronunciation. And there are a few more things like he's never actually rendering double consonants, as in Yabanna. He's also never using the soft THs, as in, what we have in Karazgaradon. So the DH, which is a soft TH sound. So it might be a letdown if your expectation is that high. Pronunciation, if you don't mind all of that, if you think, well, I'm not really such a geek, doesn't turn me off, then, well, this is not a minus. On either side, actually, if you are sensitive to such things and how people render the pronunciation, then I'd say, going to be difficult. I'm not saying don't buy it. If you're a fan, you're probably going to buy it anyway. All in all, I think we have the luxury now of having two excellent versions. And, you can actually jump from this one to the other, depending on your mood. I certainly will explore Andy Serkis's audiobook more now. I'm right now not yet fond of it in the way that I'm fond of Martin Shaw's version, but I think it will grow on me. And I think this is generally what I want. Of course, it's easy to say, well, I like this better. So for now, just to say this is my preference, right now, I vastly prefer Martin Shaw's version. That being said, I will allow Andy Serkis to grow on me in a way. And I hope you will also. So, thank you for watching. And if you like content that's mostly focused on the Silmarillion, actually, and if you're interested in my Silmarillion soundtrack that I'm writing, and I promised you I'm going to write 7 albums, I'm also very close to the book, so I make sure I stick to the texts and don't go overboard, like writing my own stories like some other people are doing, Anyway, I'd be super chuffed if I can say hello to you during one of the premieres for the album stream. There's going to be a full album stream on the 7th of July 2023, and you can get the album on all streaming devices and streaming services, sorry. And and on YouTube, there's going to be a video stream every week. So I hope I'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Cheers.